How's it going? Thought I'd just do a little bit of a clip showing the other way the compost worms work for us in the patch. Not only do we have them in a couple of bathtub farms and barrel farms, we also have them in the compost heap and a lot of them in the wicking beds as well. So when I first started reading up Colin Austin's work and Scarecrow's work on the wicking beds and containers, the first thing that I really liked about it was the fact that they all have some element of worms in there, whether there's a feeding station to feed the worms directly or they're just in there feeding off organic matter, compost, manures that's in the beds themselves. It just struck me as being a great way to feed your plants without having to worry about too many other additives. I still do add other mulches and I add liquid fertilizers and that sort of thing, but the worms really are a bit of a power horse in the whole system, and really haven't paid them their dues in other clips I've done on wicking beds, so I thought I'd just show a couple of them in action here. Some of the beds haven't had worms added to them in a long time, pretty much all since they were made. Other beds have had worms added to them in the forms of castings. When I harvest the castings now, I don't pick out the worms individually or the cocoons and save them and put them back in the farms. Whatever comes out with the castings goes in the bed, and that way I know there's always going to be a new population of worms come through the garden. I have found with the wicking beds that when I've pulled them apart, if the top of the bed's too bare and it gets a little bit hot and a little bit warm, you tend to find a lot of the worms, not so much at the surface, but down the bottom in the wetter zones where it's nice and damp for them. It gives them somewhere to escape in the heat we get. Today's about 35, I think, at the moment, so they really enjoy that, don't they, chooks? So anyway, I'll stop yabbering on and I'll show you this first garden bed here. What happened with this bed here, it was very compacted soil. It was soil that we used that actually came off the property. A lot of the other beds have had soil mixes put in that were brought in. A very, very heavy soil. I found that this end of the bed in particular wasn't growing very good produce, and when I dug into it, it was just lumps of dry soil. The water wasn't wicking through it. So half of it came out. I put in a mixture of mushroom compost and also horse manure and dug that through the remaining soil, and a couple of handfuls of worm castings as well that had eggs and worms in it, and pretty much we'll just seeded a population in here. The idea was they'd hop in here and they'd just totally mow through the mushroom compost and also the horse manure. So this white stuff on the top is just some dolomite lime I put in here to sweeten it. Have a bit of a dig down, see what we can find. There's a bit of a top layer of horse manure there. Actually looks like it's been broken down fairly well. And we'll have a bit of a dig around and see if we can find any worms. There's a couple near the surface. Sorry fellas, cover them up. Have a look over here. They're pretty much finding these guys love the mushroom compost and horse manure combination. So some of them are a little bit further down, I think. I know I would be today. So, oh, there's another one. So they definitely are in here. And if you're aware, sorry matey, there's another one there. Don't really want to leave them too exposed. If you're familiar with mushroom compost, you know it comes in little strands of straw that comes in bags, and horse manure, most people are familiar with that. There's a nice big one. So there definitely is a couple of them there. They're definitely doing their job because you can't really see any of the large fibres of the mushroom compost in here. You can see a fair bit of the castings. So they're basically breaking, I saw a cocoon. They're basically breaking down all this organic matter and making the nutrients available for the plants to take up. I'll take you around the back to another bed. It's got a different mulch layer on it, and the worms have just been thriving in that. These two wicking IBCs down the back here, they've been in place for over 2 years now, I think. I could be wrong, but these guys are absolutely jam-packed with worms. The original soil went in, the castings went in with them, and the worms are just multiplied over and over. They both had timber mulch to begin with, but then I swapped over to the sugarcane mulch in this one after the first lot broke down, mainly because I didn't have any more access to it until now. I could go in and try and have a bit of a dig around, but the roots down in here I think are going to be fairly, I don't want to break too many of the corn roots. They're pretty much all matted all the way through, but there are loads and loads of compost worms in that one. This one over here has still got timber mulch, I kept the timber mulch up to this one. This one's got our galangal at the back and our turmeric at the front here, and this bed has always boomed. The only food this bed has ever had is a couple of additions of sea sole and worm cast tea, and also the timber mulch that's on here. Now we'll just pop in here, see if we can find a space to dig around. This timber mulch is basically just bits of timber that is mulched. There's not much leaf matter in here, nothing like that at all. I did mix through some horse manure with the first batch, but this last batch I just put on by itself. And this bed here has always amazed me how fast this timber will break down. Just a bit of a white back of the surface, and you'll see the condition. There's a worm right there, a little tucker. You'll see the condition of this soil. There's also some beetles in here doing the job as well. That's a beetle scat. Have a bit of a dig down. Your finger just literally just sinks straight into it. It's nice and friable and black, and I've squashed a baby worm, but they're absolutely all through here doing a great job. Take a bit of a scraping from the top, and as you can see, nice black rich soil, very friable, and there's tons of little worms down in there. There's another one just down in there. I don't like digging around too much because I really don't want to hurt the suckers. I know people probably think I'm silly. There's another one just down in here. So these guys are doing a fantastic job. Not only do they hook into stuff like the horse manure and the hays, but they really go to town on this tree mulch as well. The other tree mulch that I made up last year included leaves, green leaves from the mango and the Chinese elm, as well as horse manure. The red wrigglers moved into there and they just demolished that compost. I was planning on using it as a woody back to Eden style mulch, and they actually devoured it down to a fine grade compost with only a few little bits of timber in it. So yeah, they absolutely love this stuff. So another place we use compost worms a lot in the garden is in the aquaponics. We actually have quite a few down the bottom here in these clay balls. The idea is they're supposed to help break down the fish solids a little bit further, and also look after all of the solid waste that's left from the plants, like all bits of roots and leaves. As you can see, there's a fair bit of solid muck down in there. Some of that, oh, you can see it on my hands, some of that will be worm castings, other bits will be bits of broken down roots and the like. So they just take it down that little bit further and make it available, the nutrients that is, to the plants. When we pull the plants out, you can actually see quite often a number of worms sort of trapped around the roots trying to escape. So we try to collect all them and add them back into the bed before we compost the root sections. And also too, in all our potting mixes we like to throw in worm castings, worms and all. I make up a fairly organic rich potting mix, one that includes a fair bit of screened horse manure, and that just goes into the pots, and the worms are quite happy in there. And quite often when you plant them out into the garden, you'll see a little worm trying to escape the sunlight. So yeah, I'm not going to empty these out and show you, unfortunately. I think they're rather happy in there at the moment. Just before we get to the front yard, I thought I'd just show you my compost heap here. It's an IBC frame. I've just laid a layer upon layer of the tree trimmings, like I explained before, Chinese elm, horse manure, lucerne or alfalfa hay, and yeah, I've made up a bit of a compost pile. It was actually rather high. It was sitting about half a foot taller than this, 15 centimetres, but it sunk down nicely. And in here all I've done is thrown in a whole heap of compost worms. These are the red wrigglers. There's one down in there, and I've put them towards the side of the pile because I don't want them to overheat. There's another one there, and just in this small area here it looks like they've pretty much all taken over. There's a whole heap of them down in there, a bit hard for you to see, but these guys will slowly take over, start reproducing and move into this compost pile, and hopefully in about 2 to 3 months time it'll probably settle down to about a third of the original height, and it'll be crawling with compost worm. So this is the last bed we've built out the front here. It's a bit of a mixed bag. It's actually supposed to be a turmeric bed. We've got a whole heap of turmeric planted out in here. It's got a couple of daikon radishes popped up. We've had some pumpkins, I think they were pumpkins or cucumbers, pop up. We've got asparagus coming up from seeds from another bed. We've got tomatoes, always tomatoes. We've got some dill over the back there. But yeah, anyway, back to the worms. So I'll just have a bit of a dig around down in here and we'll have a look and see what we can find. There's some worm activity down there. There's a couple of them just down in there. Another couple more of them just in here. So I feel bad for bringing them out in the sunlight. Another one down in there. So there's obviously loads of worms in here. They're doing their job. Nowhere near as many as would be in a normal worm farm. That's not the idea. I'm trying to grow plants here, but there is enough in there that they're going to slowly break down the organic matter that was added, primarily the mushroom compost and the horse manure in this bed. So I think they're doing a fantastic job. I actually really need to mulch this bed, so as soon as I get some sugarcane mulch on here, it'll give them a bit more protection from the heat. Like I said, it's a little bit warm today, so there you go. I'm hiding in the shade now. All these worms have pretty much all been bred out of the original 1000 top-up pack of red regulars we bought at the Bunnings warehouse. It's a hardware chain here in Australia. That was in 2009 or 2010 we bought them, and they're in every bed, every barrel. They're in all the compost heaps. They're loose in the ground now. We find them in the bed around the Tahitian lime and the Kaffir lime tree. They've escaped and they've gone everywhere. So from that 1000, we've managed to breed enough for ourselves. We've given away tons to local people as well as family and friends. So they're one of those investments. Once you have them, if you've got the right growing conditions, remembering we are the subtropics, you will have them forever. So I did go out the other day and actually order some a mixed bag. I got red regulars, tigers and the African night crawlers. They're in the new bathtub farm under the house there. So the idea behind buying the extra worms is I really wanted the African night crawlers. I want to try breeding them up in a small farm for the fish in the aquaculture and aquaponics setup. So that's the idea behind getting those guys. But the castings, they won't go amiss at all. They'll all go straight out onto the gardens. We've got a couple of other clips on how we've used the worm products around the yard, activating biochar, making up compost tea, that sort of thing. So check them out if you're interested. Other than that, feel free to ask any questions, leave any comments, make any suggestions. I'll get back to you all. Yeah, so I will pretty much will leave it there. Hope you all have a great one and take it easy. Catch ya.